Hey, my name is Dave Bosscher. I'm a pastor over here at Lakeside Community Church here in Alto, Michigan. And I wanted to take a minute to share with you a little bit about our story of how we got to where we are today with this building project, but more specifically, the integral role that Church Growth Services has played in helping us get to where we are today. Now, our story starts about 4 or 5 years ago when we began to notice a couple things about our facilities. One thing we noticed is that God was blessing a lot of our ministries, and that was great, but we were noticing that there's certain things about our classrooms and other aspects of our facilities that were starting to bottleneck God's ministries. And so we started to try to articulate what that is. And we also started to notice that our building, probably like a lot of other church buildings, was excellently built for its purpose over 40 years ago, but since then 40 years have passed and a lot of overhaul needed to happen. And the list of wants and needs just kept growing and growing and growing. So finally, we started employing an architect and assessing those needs and making a plan for the building. But along with that, we engaged the services of Church Growth Services, and that was incredibly important. Because when you start a project like this, there's a number of questions that, at least in most churches, I think, none of us really know how to answer, and they're critical. Things like, how much can we actually afford to spend on the facilities that we have? And furthermore, if we're going to do that, how much of that, if any, is sensible to take out as debt? And then, with regard to all these other things, how do we actually have meaningful, helpful conversations involving congregational input on this without things turning into a mess? And those are all really difficult things to figure out. Compound that with the fact that COVID struck right in the middle of this, and our sanctuary was only halfway full, and we're a little bit tenuous about whether or not to still do this, and we desperately needed help. Now, at that moment when we started engaging with Church Growth Services, first of all, when we started talking to Mike, the critical answers to those 3 questions that I just mentioned started to take shape. First of all, he came with just some excellently laid out data. He gathered everything that we have in terms of our financial records, but also some demographics information about our people. And based on all the data that he had, was able to make a really sensible projection of what was sane for us to spend and where the red line was. And the tension level came down for us a little bit. Then after that, he was able to help us assess how much debt is actually sensible to take out, if any, in order that can start to be paid off before the momentum is gone, and that doesn't wind up being an impediment to the long-term viability and ministry of the church. And our temperature came down a bit. But then finally, he started guiding us through conversations with the rest of the congregation to figure out, like, what is our attitude about things like debt? And that varies from church to church. And what is our appetite? What are our dreams? How hard do we want to go into this? And what came out of that, out of a church where, in every church there's going to be disagreement. After those conversations, the level of unity in this church, even during uncertain times when people are sitting distanced and stuff, the level of unity was incredible, to the point where now we are all in this together at this point. Now, after that, though, come the challenges for me personally, because it's one thing for everybody to agree on a number and let's make a plan. It's an entirely different matter when I, as the pastor, have to figure out how I'm going to run a campaign for this, because I'll be honest, I have never been a professional fundraiser before. Like, I am a preacher, not the campaigner. I don't know what to do with this. I have an idea, and it's probably wrong. But Mike came around from Church Growth Services and helped us build out excellent teams to help get the right gatherings and the right way to pitch things, the right way to talk about things. And he was able to guide our teams through really making our case to people both inside the church and outside the church, as well as to help me personally know how to go to people of means that I know who love my church inside and out, who'd love to support us, and how I can go and make that ask in a really good way. Now, as a result of that, here's where we stand. COVID is over. And a lot of churches are exhausted and they're tired. A lot of them are just treading water. But what I'm noticing is that in part because we had this to do together, that's not my church. Yes, my volunteers are tired, but there's something here that I don't see anywhere else, and that's momentum. We set our target of $2.2 million was going to be the cost of this. We needed to raise $1 million in 3-year pledges. We hit 1.1, exactly where Church Growth Services said we would probably be able to come out. In addition, we've had individual gifts to go on top of that. We've organized all the gifts in kind. And now what I'm seeing is I'm seeing new spaces get built in my church for children, new places where we can sit in circles instead of rows, and an updating of my church that actually makes us look a lot more like what our neighborhood is now growing into. In a word, I get to look forward to a fall where there's going to be excitement, where we're already going to see more visitors at our church. That's already starting. And we'll be able to offer better hospitality for children especially, but also for families and for new believers at my church who need to be discipled. And I'm not going to say that none of that could have happened without church growth services. I think that once God's plans are in motion, I think God gets what God wants. But what I can say for sure is that I don't think this would have gone nearly as well. I don't think that we would have been nearly as smart about our money. I don't think that we would have been nearly as good at dealing with disagreements and maintaining unity. And I certainly don't think that we would have made nearly as many good choices and there wouldn't be as much excitement as there is now if it wasn't for church growth services. And that's why I'm talking to you right now. Because here's what I think. Looking back at everything that we had to assess and figure out about this project, looking back at all the conversations that we had to have, I know how I would have done that alone, and I do not think that would have gone as well. As a matter of fact, I'd go so far as to say it would have been foolish not to get help like the help that we got. So that's just what I wanted to share. And if you are where we were, I want to urge you to trust God. I want to urge you to pursue what He has for you, and to pursue, though, the wisdom that He actually puts in front of you to help you through this, because you don't have to figure all of this out alone, and it's worth it to get the help that you need. I hope that God blesses you in your journey.